We had a couple testimonies, time of singing, and it was just a great time of sharing. Kids meeting. We had all the kids from the school come in, and we met them, and we was able to share with the kids, and it was just a really neat time. This was actually in a different church, but I love the little kids, as you can tell, and they are just so precious. This is all the school kids at the Dagu Church. There's somewhere around 160, somebody help, 68 thereabouts, enrolled in the school right now, in 5 classrooms. Basically 5 classrooms plus the church, so it's very crowded. This is just a picture of the yard, what it looks like. That's actually the back of the church. So you can see it's not concrete. It's not really nice like the yards here, but it's very, very functional. On the right is Nunemaker. He is the missionary down there in charge. He's Dezod. Dezod is a term that means goofy, crazy. It can mean a lot of things, but we get along very well. We served with him while he was down there. He actually came when we were there. And on the left is Paragons. And the way you remember Paragons is pair of guns, and he has a pair of guns. He is the head translator, and he is very, very good at what he does. We were able to build 6 church benches while we were there. It was, the guys just knocked them out. Once we got started, they were doing one, I think they said every 8 minutes. We planned all morning and maybe into the afternoon to get them done, and we done them all, including staining and everything, in about hour and 45 minutes. So that's just the Nebraska teams and the way they work. But it was a very joyous time and very much needed. We went up to visit another church, to visit Star and I and Sam and Jessica's Hope for Kids child. And on the way back, when you're coming to the church, you're going down a pretty steep grade to get down to the church. And that's a picture of the church from up there. I just thought that was kind of a neat picture. We had a men's gathering in the afternoon where we were able to sing some songs together and share about their culture. We had quite an opportunity to ask them about things they do, and they had an opportunity to ask us. And it was really just a chance of getting to know them, and it was really enjoyed that. It was a good time of sharing. Kirk, looks like you're giving a message up there. Must be. Nope, that's greetings. That's the greetings of Sunday morning. I don't know. I got my picture. Anyhow, we all gave a greeting on Sunday morning. Greeted the church, told them who we were, a little bit about ourselves. Ladies' tea on the one afternoon. The ladies of the church got together with our ladies, and they had tea, but they didn't have tea. They had cookies and whatnot, played some games, and I guess Deb done a devotion, is that right? And I hear it was very good. And they had ladies' tea is a wonderful time of fellowship and getting to know the different ladies. We had the opportunity to do some water filters. We took down 11 water filters with us. We were able to get 9 of them installed. So they had 2 more to do, which they would get done. And it's there just to the left. That is the female deacon of the church in her house. And that's kind of a typical inside of the house. Some are a lot better, some are not quite so good, but that's what that is. We only had 2 flat tires while we were out. Wasn't too bad. So that's just when you live in a country of rocks, it's very hard on tires. So I actually wanted to get a picture of Troy working. No, Troy done a very good job. When we first got to Haiti, first got to the church, they had a gathering for us. They followed us into church, and people from all over were there. The mayor was there. People from other churches were there. And we were out delivering water filters on our last day, and somebody come by and gave our translator a rooster. So, what is that all about? So, on our way out, we happened to see the guy, so we stopped and got to talking to him. And he couldn't be there the day that we got there. So he brought the team a rooster, just because he wouldn't be there. Wow. That rooster is worth, what they say, $25 US. So a pretty good chunk of change that he just offered to us. He told us that we could eat it or fight it. They do fight roosters down there, which is, let me rephrase that. Roosters fight each other. Just picture one. Which is very much looked down on by the church. Rooster fighting is not. It's kind of like gambling, and it's very much looked down on. It was the last day. We didn't have time to eat it, so we ended up just giving it to the pastor. But that's what that was about. So that's ask somebody about the rooster. The female deacon that you saw, this is the outside of her house. And this is very typical. There again, some are a lot nicer than that, and a lot of them are not near that nice. But I just kind of wanted to show you what the outside of one might look like. Jim Starkey with his tongue out. He's a missionary that came out to visit one day. And then Tessa, the gal, she was with us the whole week, and she is fairly new with RMI, and this is the first time she was out with the team all week, and she was just a breath of fresh air. We really got to enjoy Tessa. We got the opportunity to drink coconut water, milk out of a fresh coconut. A guy showed up with some coconuts and machete and opened them up and handed them out and gave everybody the opportunity to try the fresh coconut water. And some of them liked it. I think most of them did. Personally, I don't care for it, but that's okay. That's just my opinion. The food they gave us, a lot of food. It was very good. This is a typical, that would have been Sunday. They do their best for us. They bring in their china as it is, and serving dishes, and all of the food is cooked over charcoal or something like that. They don't have a stove and an oven and a microwave or none of that. It's all cooked over charcoal. We had a lot of really good food. I really can't think of anything that we had that really didn't like this year. So you can ask the team about the food, and they can talk to you a little bit about the different food. Hope for Kids is something, if we move on with this, that will be talked about. The boy there is Sam and Jessica's sponsored child. They have sponsored him for, several years. And then the little girl is a child that Star and I sponsored. And we have sponsored her for several years too. So it's just a joy to watch these kids grow. When they come out and see you, they come and give you a hug, and it's just a really, really neat opportunity to be able to help these kids out. Once again, this is Pastor and his family. He has 3 kids. The older girl on the right is adopted, if I understand it right, and the other 2 are his own. That little guy that she's holding, he is just a blast. He's a little shy, but once you get to know him, he's a lot of fun. And we got the opportunity to go to the house that we built last year. This is Emily and her 3 girls. Her boys were in school. One's now in college or in university in Port-au-Prince. But we got the opportunity to tour the house and see what she's done on the inside and that. And she just could not thank the church enough for that house. She is just very thankful for it. And I want to thank you too for that. Okay, let's go ahead and have the team come up and sit down, and we're going to have each team member answer 2 questions. We're going to ask them basically what their highlight was, or what's the best thing that happened to them or that they saw while they were down there. We'll go through and let them answer that. And then after that, we're going to make it a little harder. And we're going to ask them to share a little bit about how they saw God work in different ways. So, as they're setting, I'll go ahead and tell you my favorite thing or my highlight. From Dagu Baptist Church to Zongle, where we went to, was somewhere around an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. We left the church, went over the hill, down rough roads, through the highway, and right as we got ready to pull into the church, Paragons, the guy that I was driving, you saw him, his phone rang. And he talked a little bit, and then he told me that was the pastor, just to seeing if we made it okay. And I really appreciated that. But anyhow, I'm just going to hand it to Dan, and we'll just go around and share your favorite thing.
Mine's interactive here. You got to help me. Everybody needs to hold up your hands. Got them up. Not the other one, both of them. And do this. Worship is fun. And when God asks you to move. When God asks you to rejoice. You know, it tells us in Psalms, it tells us in James that make a noise towards the Lord. Be happy that you can worship. So we didn't have sit on your hands, quiet, solemn songs. Everybody was up, everybody danced, everybody felt the message of God moving through them. And I really like that.
My favorite part was definitely either the kids or the ladies' meeting. The ladies' meeting, it was very quiet at first, but then we handed out snacks, and then we started playing games, and it got really exciting. And a lot of the little old ladies have come up to me. We blasted music for 10 minutes straight, and just danced with everybody. And they just grabbed your hand and you just start dancing. So it felt really good to just connect with everyone there, and all the children were just amazing and so welcoming. They didn't care about our skin color. They just cared that we were all here for the same reason. So that really touched my heart.
One of the very best things for me was, I felt like I had a glimpse of heaven. Scripture tells us that every tribe and nation will lift our voices and we'll be in heaven together. And we were only 2 voices, but I felt like I had a glimpse of heaven. When Pastor prayed, they all prayed also Tuesday night at the prayer service, and it was just this beautiful chorus of prayer being lifted to God. It was just really powerful. And when they sing with gusto.
Well, my wife makes me cry all day. Oh yeah.
They hung signs everywhere too, so I brought one home with a sign, "Welcome to Dagu Church."
So my favorite part was the welcome. We came down this steep mountain dirt road to where the creek was. They did not wait at the church to welcome us. They came out down the road from the church to the creek crossing, and they were all there, and they weren't just waiting for us. They were singing, jumping up and down, waving, running around. They were having fun. They were glad we were there.
Well, I was going to say that the welcome was my favorite part too, and it was. And I think I had about 2 or 3 favorites. What really touched me was when we were talking with the deacons, where they were farmers too, the 2 deacons, male deacons, and we got to talking, and they suffered droughts just like we did, and their hopes and dreams were exactly the same as mine. And one of the nicest things I just happened to do, Greg talked about serving, they cooking this on the meal. I went to the cook shack and stuck my head in, and there were two women in there, just had a big pile of chicken legs on the pail on the floor, and they were just cleaning them, and I stuck my head in there and said, "Lee Goo, messy on peel." And they smiled and broke into giggles and everything. And it was, it's delicious. Thank you very much. And just their attitude was special.
Well, having served down there, I always like to watch the team and the changes that I see in the team members from the experiences they are going through. So that's always one of my favorite parts, is watching the team, watching them interact with the Haitian people, interact with the team members, learning and growing and experiencing a new culture and experiencing the glory of God in a new way.
This really is a tough question to answer, of what is your favorite part, just because the whole trip was a huge blessing, but I guess for me, the relationships, the new ones, the kids, the deacons, the people of the church that you get to connect with, even though it's very hard because we don't speak the same language. We can smile, we can have fun, we can do those things, but we know that we're brothers and sisters in Christ. As well, the relationships of the kids that we sponsor, getting to go and spend time and do that. And so the relationships is a big thing for me, not only with them, but like Star said, with our team, and being in church together, we have relationships here, but it just took it to another level. Whether it was our first year together or second year for some of us, it's a very neat opportunity to connect even deeper with our team members. So definitely the relationships.
Well, a disclaimer, I might have a chopped up onion in my pocket up here before we start, so but I'd have to agree with like Don, me being a farmer and seeing like a farmer in Haiti and just the differences between our culture and their culture, yet all the similarities. But just getting to know everyone's stories while we're down there was probably the most impactful to me, because regardless of income class, they all were just so joyful and so happy, and just, I would say that was my favorite part, was getting to know people's stories.
My favorite part was definitely playing with the kids, because every time that it was time to eat, I was kind of sad to go inside because I had to leave the kids. But we tried to teach them games, and they taught us games. And there was one little girl in particular that I think she held my hand almost the entire trip. And I love playing with the kids. That was definitely my favorite part.
Yeah, like Troy said, the whole thing it's hard to pick out one favorite thing. I don't remember when it was, but Pastor Frico had everybody write down their name so he could, see it. And then later at the prayer service maybe or something, he said that, yeah, I have everybody's name so I can pray for each one of you individually by your name. So that's probably top of my list.
Well, thank you, Sam. I was going to say the same thing. He doesn't speak, I'll just add to it, he doesn't speak hardly any English, if any at all. And so, there's a list of names, and for him to, when they say they're going to do something, like Greg said it, when they say they're going to pray for you, they are praying for you. And something that was thing that was humbling for me is they don't have a lot, but they are thankful. Literally, if they wake up the next day, they thank God. Just that they are thankful that they woke up and they get to serve Him one more day. They thank Him at lunch. They thank Him at breakfast. They thank Him at lunch. They thank Him at supper and everywhere in between there. They're very thankful.
So I think for me, one of my favorite things for me was to, so obviously the team came back last year and told us their experience. So I think the relationships, I would agree, building relationships with the people there, getting to know them, getting to see them. And I think just too, seeing their just joy and delight in us being there. And that's a little hard, I think, even for us to communicate to you how glad they were to see us. And they showed that in so many different ways. Again, the welcome they had for us was a little overwhelming. I think most of us kind of had a deer in the headlight looks like, what's happening here and what should we do? Because it was almost a raucous type atmosphere, but they were so pleased, so excited that we would be there. Another thing I guess that jumped out to me, and the pastor mentioned this a number of times, for the last 5 years, he's been praying for a sister church relationship. So, and he said that, and I have no reason to doubt that what he said is true. But for the last 5 years, their church, he has personally been praying that this kind of situation would happen, that he would be able to, their church would be able to partner with a sister church like us. And so I think, Greg, your second question, where do we see God work? I don't know if everybody got to answer that. Maybe we'll pass the mic back. But I think really where I saw God work is just God's providence and putting pieces together, things that I would have not had any way to know. So even the passage I preached on Sunday morning, that passage fit exactly with their theme for the year. I had no way to know that, but that's a passage that I've been thinking about, and God used that. And then on Tuesday night, again in our itinerary, it just said a special meeting. Well, I picked Colossians 1:9-12, which talks about Paul's prayer for the church at Colossae and what he was praying for them. And so that was what I said would be our prayer, and that happened to be their night of the month where they had their prayer service, and it was focused around prayer. So again, just two incidents where I had no idea of those things, but God orchestrated and coordinated and put things together. And then I think just also, I saw God's providence in a number of ways in our trip. If we were leaving this week, we would not be able to go because of the COVID situation. And basically the team leader there, Lee Nunemaker, after we left, he said, I need to go back to my office and write a letter to all the teams who are scheduled to come and let them know they can't come because of the COVID situation and having to have a negative COVID test to be able to get back out of Haiti. So you can understand if you got into Haiti, that's one thing, but if you test positive for COVID and you're in Haiti, how do you get back home, right? So that's just a scenario that I think we were very fortunate. God in His providence allowed us to go. But again, if it would have been a week later, we would not have been able to go. So a lot of different things we got to see, and I think excited about. And I think also just, again, being reminded of, I think the challenge for us is that we have so much materially, and they're so thankful. One of the deacons, Glues, his name, he said this. He said, I don't understand how you can have so much and still trust God. And I thought that was very telling. How can you have so much and still trust God? And Glued is right. I think oftentimes we can find ways to solve our problems. If we put enough time and money at it, we can find the solution. But for them, God is their first resource, not second or third, because they have no other options. So those were things that I think were meaningful to me. We need to pass the bike back, or did everybody say?
You guys ready?
Okay, so, okay.
So I would say just one example of seeing God work. I mean, we came from Nebraska to Haiti. The distance in between there, when we got there, meant nothing. And it didn't take 2 seconds for us to come together and then start worshiping and glorifying God together. And, yeah.
year I think I said prayer, and I think this year I'm going to say prayer. We're, at least convictions for me is that I think prayed for 5 years. Last year I think Emily prayed for how long? 5 years, something like that.
Several years.
But they just keep praying, and what I think, they don't just pray, but they pray with expectation. The Lord will follow through. I mean, I think they understand that sometimes maybe not to their desires, but I personally have found that I don't most of the time pray with expectation. I pray to get it off the checklist or whatever the situation is, but so that was a real conviction there, and yeah.
I think it was really good for me to see Christians in another country and culture, because I think I often think of Christianity as being something that we have in America. And one thing that Lee told us was their system is based on honor and dishonor. And so they talk about the gospel as being, we have brought dishonor on God because of our sin. And I think it was just really good for me to see the difference in our culture, but just the different way that they talk about the gospel, but yet we're all believers.
I'd have to say, probably saw God working the hardest through, we kind of prayed about it going down there, that every one of our strengths would be utilized, and not only like were our strengths utilized, but the Haitians, like you could tell in the congregation, like the deacons and the pastor, they all had certain strengths that were reflected on us, and then we were able to use, I mean, because Troy's the social butterfly and was interacting with everyone instantly, and then kind of other people fell in line, and then, you know, it was like, okay, this is all right to just open up and be yourself, and that was probably how I saw God working the greatest while I was down there.
It's hard to pick one, I guess, but a little bit of a backstory. When we were installing the water filters, we went to one of the male deacons' house. His name was Janol, and we were asking him about his house because many of the roofs were lost in the hurricane, and that, like the church roof and the school roof, those were replaced. And so we were noticing that his roof looked new, the steel inside of it. And we were asking, did you have to replace this in the hurricane or after the hurricane? And he had said the whole house was replaced. Like, he had lived there for 14 years, so he expanded, like tried to figure out what was going on. And he lost his whole house during the hurricane, and they built it back in the same spot. And he had said that through this, like, God is so good and God provided. He had been praying, and the church had been praying, and he had his house rebuilt by some Americans that came down and served. And so however that came together, and he just kept going. He said, this is why I have been able to serve so well, is because God has provided for me, and I have nothing else to give but service. And so all week he stayed up every night guarding, like he was on watch all through the night, which we didn't even know who was doing it. We knew someone was. He was providing water. I think I might have been the only one that took a cold shower every day. It turns out I would shower, and then there would be hot water brought, and so he was the one getting hot water for the gals and for some of the guys, and just he was going above and beyond. He was the one that brought back coconuts. Like he just wanted to do everything, like anything he could. He just gave so frivolously with so many things that it was unbelievable to see the service and just the trust in the Lord that he did. And so that was one area that was huge for me. But also he would be in church, and like it'd get hot and long sometimes, and and you'd see him kind of close his eyes for a little bit, but he was always there, and he was doing everything. And it's like the backstory makes it even that much more when you realize all the stuff he was doing behind the scene and there all day. Just plus he had his cattle and his farm and stuff. He was taking care of all friends through trust in God.
We can take a lesson in hospitality and service from the Haitian people, and just watching them, like has been said, they don't have anything, but they worship God, they glorify God, they're willing to serve. And it's just humbling to know that we're so easily let things slide here in the US, or are comfortable, that we don't want to step forward and do some of that. And so watching God work down there in their servant's attitude and their servant's heart is something I really, really enjoy and bring back every time, thinking I need to work on this.
Well, the way I thought God worked was in myself. I could see that the most. At first, I thought, well, I'll just give the money directly to them. That'd be a lot better and a lot more useful than me going down there. But what I found out is it's not the gift or the size of gift. It's the sharing, whether we have little or a lot. It's the sharing of God's gifts and grace between us. It's just the sharing that was the work and miracle.
So that's my dad. I took his answer the first time. I think he took my answer this time, going this way. So it's most easily identified and God working in my heart and me becoming aware of how that's happening. Occasionally I have moments of what I feel are spiritual lucidity, and usually they occur about 4 o'clock in the morning. And before we left, I'd woken up and just this thought, I had to write it down beside my bed there. Ultimately, we are alone with our Savior. And so there's all these things in our lives. And we can kind of choose to try to make that stuff make us more comfortable and build walls for our comfort, or we can choose to use what God has given us to build bridges and bring other people to Christ. And so that's how God's working in my heart right now.
The hospitality was huge, and I was so moved by the deacon that stayed up all night, and by the women who, cooking over a charcoal fire, it was like preparing Christmas meal 2-3 times a day for guests. And you're taking your bed sheets and your pillows and providing for your guests. RMI provided cots for us, but there were also other women that came in from the country, and they were sleeping on the church floor on concrete and had given us, a lot of their bedding, and it was sacrificial, and it was very, very humbling, very humbling. And the other glimpse of God's work that I saw was during women's tea, when we were giving the message of Psalm 23, and I would read a verse or half of a verse, and then Anderson would interpret that, and he didn't need to interpret it. They were already reciting it from their memory as I gave it, and it was really cool to see how, they had God's word in their hearts.
So I really see God in the community of Dagu. With the children growing up, they're going to be the future of Haiti. So seeing their strength in God, there are a few times I noticed where some of the kids wouldn't pay attention, but that's probably because me and Rachel were sitting with them, and there's a bunch of white people here, so that's kind of weird for them. Not weird, different for them. So the future of those children are growing up, and they're gonna bring a whole new future with God to Dagu, and possibly like Haiti. So
I really gotta echo what just everybody else has said, but the biggest way I saw God work was the dichotomy. God's economy was at work. It was people who had nothing gave everything. People who came to serve were served, and I saw it especially in the team because we've got different personalities, and we saw people who are quiet and reserved dancing. We saw people who are normally loud and boisterous, I don't want to say shocked, but forced to be quiet and look inside. We saw, we saw people who didn't want to speak in public, giving messages. And I think if we take that door that God opened, it'll do wonders.
Well, where I've seen God work is sitting right in front of you. Over and over again, where we were there, we see teams come in. Oh, we're going to go down there. We're going to change Haiti. We're going to change the world. And I'm guessing there's probably a few of you that felt that way. I know the first time I did. But watching the team change as the week goes, knowing there's no pastors up here. Aaron, you have Bible training, right? No, a little bit. I don't think anybody else has any Bible training, correct? Yet there was 3 messages and how many devotions? Who won't done devotions or messages? They're just common, everyday people. They're monkeys, but they're common, everyday people. When I say they're monkeys, there's a saying when we go to Haiti, there's a story they tell. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but it's basically you're a monkey in a fish's world. You don't understand. But yet, seeing them go down there and work alongside of the Haitian people, not questioning. I'm sure there's a lot of questions in their heads. And there was a lot of good questions come out. But right there is where I saw God work. And I really think the whole congregation should give this group a hand because they done great things for the Kimball Church. So can we give them a hand? If we move on with the partnership, I would encourage everyone, I don't care how old you are, I care a little bit how young you are. Consider going on a mission trip. Consider going down to visit Reveiw Church. Because we can sit up here, we can talk all day long. You still wouldn't quite understand. Consider going. So, that's what we have. Thank you once again, everybody, for going.
I was just going to say, this is such a cool opportunity for us as Nebraskans. How often do we get to have a group as big as this from a church our size go and make an impact, but come back impacted? And I know that not everybody, probably not today, but if you do get the chance to come and talk to them, I think some of them might have gotten some sleep last night, but they're still coming down from the trip. But this is our chance, even while we're still in Nebraska, to see how God is moving, not only here, but also in Haiti. And we also have the opportunity as Christians in Kimball, Nebraska, to recognize and to understand in a way that we haven't been able to before, what does it mean to be brothers and sisters in Christ with other people that we are so different from? And come to find out, I mean, from everyone's testimony here, we're really not all that different. I think it's easy for us to see things differently than they really are. Did you have anything? Okay.
So I was just going to mention probably some Sunday evening, maybe later in February now, we'll try to have, maybe with the communion service, a little more in depth about the opportunities for us as a church to partner with them and give you some more details about Hope for Kids, what that looks like, how that works, opportunities we might have to make an investment in the Dagu church and with the school. We don't have time today to do that, but just want to let you know that's coming, and so be looking for that. Encourage you to come visit with us personally. As was said, there's a lot of pictures, and we'll try to not overwhelm you with some of those things. But just want to let you know more to come, I think, and some more details about opportunities to serve, what might our partnership with them look like, and then opportunities are great, and so we'll need to pray over and ask God to give us wisdom. What does it look like for us to partner with them? Then I think also praying about how might we do that sacrificially and be challenged in that. So anyway, just wanted to give you a heads up there. All right, anything else?
All right, we'll go ahead. Oh, okay. We'll go ahead and I'll have you I'll have you stand and sing. And you guys can too. We'll stand and sing the doxology. Praise God from